persons having anything to do before the Honorable, the Justice E. Susan Gosh of the Superior Court, now sitting at Fall River, within and for the Commonwealth. Draw near, give your attendance, and you shall be heard. God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Court is in session. Be seated, please.
Returning to 2013-983, Commonwealth versus Aaron Hernandez.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
Let me first thank you for all leaving early enough to be able to get here on time despite this yet additional snow accumulation. It is very much appreciated. And let me also ask you, have any of you seen or heard or read or overheard anything at all about this case or Mr. Hernandez since I last inquired? There are no firm responses, and have any of you discussed this case or Mr. Hernandez with anyone at all since I last inquired? There are no firm responses, and have any of you had any difficulty following any of my instructions not to talk about or otherwise communicate about or look at or listen to or do any research at all about this case or Mr. Hernandez? There are no firm responses. The witness may resume the stand.
Remind you that you're still in jail.
May I inquire, Your Honor?
You may.
Morning, Your Honor.
Trooper, when we left off, we had done some work with the tire. So let me sort of back up a little bit and ask you, in general, do you follow a particular method when analyzing a tire tread impression?
I do.
And just for the jury, if you could just explain that in general terms.
It's the scientific methodology of ACE-V, which is an acronym which stands for Analyze, Compare, Evaluate, and Verify.
And with regards to the first, the A, what does that mean regarding tire tread impressions?
You analyze the tire impression to determine if there's sufficient quality and quantity in the impression so that you could make an actual comparison on the tire.
And what sorts of things are you looking for in the questioned impression to know whether or not you'd have sufficient information?
Class characteristics.
And those are?
Sipes, grooves, anything in that tire that would indicate there's a particular tread design.
When you went to visit the automobile the first time, what did you know about in terms of a tire tread impression that you were going to use to compare to?
I received a photograph of the question impression.
Who did you get that from?
Lieutenant Bennett.
May I approach you?
Man.
Show this photograph and ask you to recognize what that is.
I do.
What is that?
That is the photograph of the impression that I did my analysis and comparison on.
Yeah, do you just speak up when you speak? What is that again, sir?
That is the question impression in which I conducted my comparison and evaluation on.
Is that a fair and accurate representation of the actual one that you used?
It is.
Move to admit, Your Honor.
Doctor, this next exhibit.
May I follow?
Me.
With regards to this particular image, which has been marked 277, when you were first given this photograph, did you make note of any of the particular details in the photograph?
I did.
Could you tell the jury what you noted?
I noted that there were grooves and sipes and class characteristics in the photograph, and there was a scale so that the photograph could be calibrated.
What does that mean in terms of calibration? Why is the scale important?
You want to calibrate the image to a one-to-one, a life-size image, so that when you're conducting your comparison, you're sliding a one-to-one known exemplar across the impression.
Okay. And how do you do that with the image to be compared?
To compare it,
In other words, how do you get this picture into a form to compare it? What's the process?
it's put in at the time, it was a 4A, which is an archiving software. They have a tool on there, so digitally, you take a measurement, a known distance on the ruler, and by a measurement of pixels, it turns it into a one-to-one photograph.
And how do you go about checking that the result is actually one-to-one?
I take a ruler, exactly to the, that's a tire track ruler, and I print the photograph out and check the ruler to see if it's on.
It's accurate.
Accurate, correct.
Now, when you looked at this photograph for the first time, when you were at the motor vehicle, what did you notice with regards to the level of detail?
It was of sufficient quality and quantity.
And can you point out, sir, where on the photograph you learned that?
Well, upon analyzing the tire track, you can see that it has 5 ribs. You have the first rib.
Again, you just keep your voice up.
Sure. You have one rib right here that runs along the photograph. You have a second rib in this area here, a third rib in this area here, a fourth rib that runs across here, and a fifth rib on the bottom. It also has design features which are consistent with the grooves and sipes of the tire, and there's design features throughout each one of these ribs.
Just going to zoom this in for you. Now that we've zoomed in, could you tell any of the features when you looked at this photograph within each of the ribs?
Yes.
Could you point those out?
You have these thicker grooves in here, these shallower sipes in through here. They continue across. You tend to lose them in this area here, and then pick them up off to the right. On the second rib here, you can see tread elements of different shapes and sizes, as well as the third rib, fourth rib, and the fifth rib.
Could you see within each of the ribs whether or not there was sipes?
Not without looking at the known.
So with regards to this particular image, were you able to use, just at this level of this image, use the photograph as something useful to compare at that sort of macro level?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And as regards the tires that were on the Nissan, what did you note with regards to the tires of the Nissan itself?
I noticed that both of the rear tires were consistent in a general tire design.
And what is that? When you say general, what do you mean?
Just the design of the tire was consistent with the questioned impression.
And the front tires?
They were of a different design.
In what way?
Well, the front tires were a Enduro model. They had 5 ribs as well as this tire. However, they had different design features.
What was the distinction that you noticed then? What was the difference?
The outside of the tread blocks on that particular tire appeared to have 2 tread blocks in there. And if you look at the outer edges of this rib here, they extend all the way from top to bottom, whereas in the Enduro tire, they had a tread block on this area and a tread block on the bottom, so it was somewhat segmented. Also on the third rib, which is the middle rib, there was no tread design in there. And you can see in this middle rib in here that there is actually some tread design in there.
Sir, I ask if you recognize what those 2 photographs are.
I do.
And what are those?
This one here is the front passenger side tire, and this one here is the front driver's side tire.
Move to admit, Your Honor.
And mark this next exhibit. Me.
Before I get to that, sir, in regards to this particular image here, can you point out what you meant by there was detail on the center, or sipes on the center or the third of the sort of treads?
Well, you have the first rib here, you have the second rib, and the third rib here. And you can see where there's grooves in here indicating there's some type of a tread design in here.
Show you what's been marked 278. What are we looking at there, sir?
That is the front driver's side tire.
And 279.
That is the front passenger side tire.
Now, with regards to what you saw that day, is that the way that the tires looked when you went down to look at the car the first time?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And what is significant on that particular tire with regards to the question impression?
Well, on the outer ribs here, this is the outer rib, you can see where there's a particular tread block that comes up through on the outer edge, and directly next to it, you can see where there's another segmented tread block, which is all part of that one rib. When you go over to the second rib here, and the third rib, there's no tread design on that third rib.
And with regards to your analysis, what did that allow you to conclude?
That it was excluded as a source of the impression.
278. Did you conduct a similar analysis?
I did,
And did that allow you to conclude something?
yes.
And what was that?
This tire,
That's when you use the word conclude to form an opinion.
Did it allow you to form an opinion?
it did.
And what was that?
It was excluded as a source of the impression.
And why was that, sir?
It was a different tread design.
And specifically the same areas that you mentioned for the other tire?
That's correct.
After looking at that, sir, what was the next thing that you did?
I looked at the rear tires.
And when you looked at the rear tires, what did you find?
I found that they were consistent in general tread design.
What does consistent mean in that context?
General tread design, we didn't actually do a actual comparison of a one-to-one. It was basically looking at the photograph and seeing that there's similar tread elements in that where it could possibly be that particular tire.
Okay. Based on that, what was the next step that you took?
I took inked known test impressions.
How'd you do that?
Basically what we do is we take a section of chartboard Chipboard is a very dense material. It gives a nice smooth surface to roll the tire on. In the event that there's any type of imperfections in the floor surface, they won't bleed through onto the impression.
I'm just going to ask that you not go over testimony that already has been elicited from yesterday, that we not keep testimony.
Okay. With regards to the particular inked impressions, how many did you take that day?
2.
How many for each tire?
2 for each tire.
And what did you do with those?
I rolled them up, and I gave them to Lieutenant Bennett.
Okay. When was the next time that you saw those?
The middle of August.
I'll hand you these items and ask you to just open that up.
This is the known test impression of the rear passenger tire.
And this, sir?
That's a roll test impression of the rear driver's side tire.
Move to admit these, Your Honor.
No objection, Your Honor, but I thought that Trooper said that you took 2 of each tire.
There's one here.
Okay.
Objections overruled. Or I didn't think there was an objection.
There was no objection,
I'm
all right.
sorry. Maybe not as the next exhibit.
May the witness come down and stand around. What we have here is Exhibit 281. Sir, what was this?
This is the rear passenger side tire test impression.
And on this particular impression, could you just show the jury, please, where the ribs are?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And what are the sipes?
The sipes are these short grooves in here. They're basically superficial. They're very not so deep as the
You're away from the microphone.
You have to really keep your voice up, sir.
These are the sipes. These are the sipes in here. These narrow grooves. The main grooves will lead through and end up at the end of the sidewall of the tire.
We really got to keep your voice up. With regards to the particular pattern here along each of the ribs, was that a simple or complex pattern as compared to other tires?
It's complex.
And what makes it complex?
Well, it has a noise treatment sequence. There's many different tread elements to this particular tire. And these particular tread elements are arranged in all different sequences throughout the tire.
And I note that on the bottom there are letters.
Correct.
What were those?
Those are segments where the wear bar indicators are, that we put those on there. That way, if we have to go back to the tire, we know which section of the tire, if there's some particular characteristic that we find in an impression, we can go back to the tire and see if there's something responsible for that characteristic.
With regards to the pattern that you described, with regards to the actual pattern of this particular tire, the sort of little changes from one section to the next on any given rib, did you make note whether or not that repeats over the course of the tire?
The tire design,
The tire design itself?
it's different throughout the entire tire, depending on the length of piece that you have.
Why do the manufacturers do that?
It's a noise treatment sequence. They'll arrange, if there's one particular shape of a tread element, generally there's 3 different sizes, a large, medium, and a small, and there are different sequences throughout the entire rib of the tires. And what that does, it quiets the tire.
At this level, when you were just looking at the photograph, what did you do next? So in other words, how did you get from the question impression to this particular known impression?
I superimposed this test impression over the question impression.
How did you know where on the tire itself an impression would fall?
Basically, the segments, this is the outside of the tire. Okay, what you're looking at here, this is the outside of the tire. The wear bar indicators in between the ribs at 2/32 of an inch. We can segment the tire in those respective portions. So as the tire is being rolled on the transparency, there's another trooper with a pen who's marking these specific locations on the tire. As the tire is rolling, they'll make a mark, for example, right here. It'll roll forward, make another mark here, that will be G. That way, if we have to go back to the tire to look for a specific characteristic, we can find it.
And where do those appear on the Mylar?
On the bottom,
Point one of those out for the jury, please.
see? See.
So with reference to those wear bar indicators, how do you find sort of which of these lines here matches up with a line on the tire?
You superimpose the known test impression on top of the tire.
Once you've done that, once you've located...
You're not using those, any reason to witness not to?
No, you can turn to the stand, sir.
Okay, can you take the stand, please?
What is sort of each of those pieces between the wear bar indicators called?
Segments.
Does each of the ribs itself have a unique pattern to the noise sequence?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
On this particular tire, did the pattern within just the rib for the noise sequence, did it repeat sort of over on the other side?
The section that came from the question impression did not repeat.
Okay, how did you find that out?
I superimposed the known test impression over the question impression. And that particular section of the known test impression was the only portion that was in agreement to the class characteristics on the question impression.
May I approach, Your Honor? Show you this object and ask you what that is.
That is the test impression, a cutout portion of the passenger, rear passenger side.
Okay. And what's the significance of this particular piece?
It was the portion that made the impression
Okay. And how did you determine
by
that?
class characteristics.
Move to admit, Your Honor.
No objection.
Overruled.
Your Honor, I did not
Oh, I
object.
thought you said objection. I'm sorry.
No, Your Honor, I said no objection.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Maybe mark to the next exhibit.
And is this?
And I just also note the record should be clear because the court reporter also got objection, so, thank you.
Sorry. This particular piece of plastic with ink on it, when was this first made?
August 1st.
So is this one of the two that you made for the passenger side rear tire?
That's correct.
I'll show you this particular item and ask if you know what that is.
I do.
What is that?
That is a one-to-one photograph or a section of the photograph from the question impression.
And who created that particular photograph?
I did.
Okay. And with regards to the section that we're looking at, is that the entire photograph?
No, it is not.
And how do you know what the scale is on that particular photograph?
It's a very common tire impression scale.
Okay, but is it 1-to-1, 2-to-1, 3-to-1? How do you know what it is?
This is a one-to-one, so the actual ruler would be placed on top of the ruler in the photograph to see if it was in agreement.
Move to admit, Your Honor.
I have no objection, Your Honor.
Thank you, maybe mark to the next exhibit.
May I publish that?
Me.
What we previously had, 283. Sir, what are we looking at here?
This is a photograph of the question impression.
Okay. And just the rule that you used for scale, is that at the bottom of the photograph?
That's correct.
And so what was the next step that you did once you had located the portion of the tire that that matched the question impression?
I looked for individual characteristics.
And what were those?
Individual characteristics are random in nature. Generally, it's when something is taken away or introduced into the tire, and those things can be things such as stones, a piece of bubble gum, nails, rocks, or a twig. And as a tire is going through its so-called life, it's changing throughout the life of the tire, so there's things being added and taken away. Some of those characteristics can be a chunk of rubber that's taken away from a tread, or it can be something as superficial as a small cut or tear on the tread surface. One of the more transient forms of a characteristic is a stone hold, where a stone is wedged in between a sipe or a groove in the tire.
Did you look at the question impression first, or did you look at the known impression first to find something like that?
I looked at the known impression and the question impression.
Okay, and with regards to the known impression, did you actually look at the tire itself?
I did.
Okay. May you come down on the stand again, Judge?
Me.
at the tire itself and the known impression, what did you find?
I found that there was what appeared to be a individual characteristic in the question impression. So then I took the known test impression, overlaid it on the tire to see if there was something there responsible for that characteristic.
And what did you discover?
I found 3 stone holes in this particular area here. This first stone hole here that has a very unique point to it. There's one in this groove right here, and there's one, the third one on the bottom in this site, which is creating a teardrop-like shape.
And was there a 4th location on the tire as well that you found that had significance?
Right in this area here, in the middle rear. There was stones. There's a stone hole in this area right here where it pushed this particular tread element up, where you can actually feel that tread element in the groove in the rim.
Thank you. Turn the stance. Oh, actually, could you come and work with me over on the overhead, Your Honor, because he has to lay 2 things over each other? Thank you. Just so we're clear, for the record, 283 is the question impression photograph, and 282 is the inked portion of the known impression. If you could, sir, could you, first on the photograph, show the jury where on the photograph that you were looking that you found the anomaly?
Within this groove right here, there is a pointed shape into this groove right here, where it comes down and rounded at the bottom. That is a void area. The second one I discovered was another void area in this particular groove, where the shadow is. The third area that I found was this site right here, which comes up to a point, almost like a teardrop shape.
And with regards to those 3 particular areas, what did you do next?
I went back to the tire to see if there was something responsible for the characteristic.
Okay? And then with regards to the inked impression, what did you do next?
I looked at the ink impression to see if that characteristic was reproduced in the ink impression.
How did you do that?
I overlaid the impression onto the question impression.
Okay? Could you show the jury the overlay? Where are the locations, sir? Where are the locations on the inked impression that was consistent with the photograph?
This area here is the first stone hole that I marked, with that pointed shape. The third one is the second stone hole in this particular groove here. However, it doesn't reproduce in the ink impression. It reproduces in the 3-dimensional impression because the stone, in my opinion, was pushed up inside that groove, not able to be reproduced in a 2-dimensional fashion. The third stone hole is right in this area here, where on the ink impression is that teardrop shape in that particular site.
With regards to your ability to line it up, what significance did the outer rib edges play?
Class characteristics.
Okay, so how did you line up the class characteristics?
Well, first from the outer edge, you can see these class characteristics of the grooves. And these will extend, because this is a 3-dimensional impression and it's ever so slightly shallow, the shoulders of the tire are being reproduced on the edge because it's being sunken into the gravel or the substrate. So those are being produced on the edges of the impression where you're not going to see them on a 2-dimensional impression because you're rolling it out on a flat surface.
Now, the transitory nature of the stone holes, to what extent does the do stones stay in tires?
They can stay in a tire for under a mile or up to thousands of miles. It all depends on how well wedged in that particular stone is in between the groove of the sight.
Is it important to your opinion whether or not the known impression, the known tire, had been on the road for a long time before you got to see it?
It would, because a tire can change over time.
And what was your understanding with regards to this particular automobile?
Well, I object, Your Honor, to an understanding. Foundation.
Objection sustained.
Now, you talked about two-dimensional images and three-dimensional images. Did you do something to create a three-dimensional image of that particular location?
I did.
Yeah, approach.
You may.
Show you these two objects and ask if you know what those are.
I do.
And what are those?
They're three-dimensional silicon molds of the tire.
Who made these?
I did.
And when were they made?
I don't recall.
What
Sometime in August
of what year?
2013.
Are they substantially in the same form as when you made them?
They are.
Move to admit, Your Honor.
No objection.
Maybe marked as the next exhibit.
$284 and $285.
Starting at 284, sir. What area of the tire is that?
This is the section where the stone holds are, the three stone holds.
So with 284, this is the section that you just showed the three stone holds on?
That's correct.
If you could, sir, just with a small dot, if you could mark where those are on the three-dimensional image. May I publish this, Your Honor? This is number 284. So directing your attention to the three marks you just made on that, starting from the left, if you could describe to the jury what that is.
That is the first stone hold.
And the shape of that particular stone hole.
It is rounded on the left side and then comes to a point on the right side.
And the next one,
That is the second stone hold.
what is the significance, if any, of where those are in relation to each other?
They're completely random in nature.
When you say they're completely random in nature, what do you mean?
Stones are continuously being introduced into a tire tread design.
With regards to your analysis, is there any significance of where they are in relation to each other?
It is,
What is that?
because they're introduced into a section of the tire that is completely random within the respective location on the tire within that tread design and noise treatment sequence.
What does that help you know? In other words, what do you derive from that, sir?
It would lead you to a more positive association.
Okay. And the third mark?
That is the third stone hold, which comes to a point on the top, which is that teardrop shape.
Would you note that point on the top on the question impression?
I did.
And was that significant?
It was.
.285, sir. Please place a small mark next to the location of the fourth stone hole that you referred to. And may I publish this as well, Your Honor? What are we looking at here, sir?
This is the fourth stone hold, the silicon mold of the fourth stone hold in this area right here. You can see where it has a triangular shape. There's two void areas in here, indicating that there was a stone. And then proceeds into the thinner area in here in the groove.
And what did that do to the outer portion of that tread?
Right in this area right here, you can see where that tread element has been pushed out into this groove that separates the ribs, and then pushed this tread element into this tread element, which in return made very little room in between that groove and here.
May I approach, Your Honor? Show you these four pieces of paper, ask me to recognize what those are.
I do.
What are those?
This is a photograph of the first stone hold on the actual tire, the location on the test impression, and the location on the question impression. The second is the second stone hold, a photograph of the stone in the actual tire, the location in the known test impression, and the void area in the question impression. The third is the third stone hold. It's a picture of the stone hold in the tire, the location in the test impression, and the location on the question impression. And this is a picture of the fourth stone hold. It's a picture of the stone hold in the tire, a picture of the stone hold in the test exemplar, and a photograph of the stone hold in the question impression.
And sir, did you prepare these to assist you and aid you in your testimony here today?
I did.
Move to admit these, move to mark these as a chalk.
No objection to it being used as a chalk drawing.
It may be used as chalk, you may mark them for identification.
AA through GD.
May I publish? Starting with what's been marked for identification AA. In general, sir, what are we looking at here?
You're looking at a photograph with arrows pointing to the #1 stone hold on the actual tire, the known test impression, and the question impression.
With regards to the question impression, can you point out where that is on the question impression, please?
Right here. This area here, where you can see the point pointing to the right, then rounds off, there's a void area in here.
Now looking at the impression from the tire, I see the arrow pointing to it, but if you could just direct the jury's attention to that as well.
Correct. This is the location between this particular groove that has that unique shape where it comes to a point onto the right.
And then on the actual tire itself, what did you find?
We found a pointed stone that was the same physical size, shape, and orientation, which was an agreement to the question impression.
Move back out for a second. This is number, or letter BB for identification. Starting on the question impression, where was the area that you looked at?
On this particular groove right here, there's a void area.
And when we looked at the inked impression,
It did not reproduce in the ink impression because it was a two-dimensional impression. So in a sense, that stone was, in my opinion, further up inside that groove where it wouldn't reproduce in a two-dimensional capacity.
but then when you looked at the tire,
There's a stone hold in that exact location.
looking at what's been marked CC for identification. The area that we're looking at here, sir, what is this?
This is the third stone hold. This is the question impression up here, where it comes to a point on the top, which is like a teardrop shape.
And on the inked impression?
And on the inked impression, it was an agreement to that same particular shape.
Did you find something there on the tire?
I did. I found a stone, and up in the upper portion of this site, you can see where there's some rubber that has been removed on the top, leaving it that pointed shape.
On the fourth location, which is ED for identification. Looking at the question impression, what did you find?
Sir, I believe it's out of focus.
Oh, sorry. How's that? Still out of focus?
A little bit.
the best we're going to get. So can you
Okay.
find it with regards to that particular photograph?
Yes, this is the four-stone hold. It has that triangular shape, where it then gets thinner towards the end. There, unfortunately, this is out of focus, but there is a void area in here.
And then with regards to the actual end of the tread, can you see anything there that was significant to you?
Yes, this extended into the rib.
On the known inked impression, that particular location?
And this area here.
And then when you look at the tire itself,
Is a stone hold in this particular area.
okay? And with regards to the end of the rib in the actual tire, what did you find?
It's protruding into the groove in the rib and pushing this particular tread element forward or up.
Now, when you were actually creating those ink impressions, not creating, excuse me, when you were actually trying to locate those ink impressions on the tire itself, did you actually sort of get down on your knees and roll it along? How did you do that?
I did.
If you could just sort of describe that process for the jury.
Basically, if you have a big enough lab table, you can set the question impression, the photograph on the table, and you have that 8-foot section, the transparency, so you're basically running it across, seeing where the class characteristics are in agreement.
Did the particular things that we're working with here today allow you to form an opinion at the individual level in this particular case?
It did.
And what was that opinion, sir?
That the passenger rear tire positively made the impression.
And was that on the 2012 Nissan that you had analyzed?
That's correct.
What was the basis of your opinion?
The court is striking the response as by the witness as to what his last opinion was. You may
Sir, did you form an
rephrase your
opinion?
question.
Oh, sorry, Your Honor. Did you form an opinion, sir, to a reasonable degree of certainty within your field of tire analysis as to whether or not the question impression, the 2012 Nissan, made the question impression the imprint from the scene?
I did.
And what was that?
It made the impression.
And what was the basis of that opinion?
It was based on the agreement between the class characteristics and the physical size and design, as well as numerous individual characteristics that are very unique and random in nature. They are of a specific shape, size, and orientation.
Did you exclude the other tire on the Nissan?
I did.
And how was that done?
It did not contain those individual characteristics.
How did you check that?
I looked at the tire.
No further questions. Thank you.
Good morning, Trooper.
Good morning, sir.
Sir, am I correct that you are part of the state police side of the crime lab,
That's correct.
as opposed to the civilian part of the crime lab?
Correct.
Okay. You're a trooper, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, you just told us that, in your opinion, the tire track impression that was photographed at the scene was made by that tire right there, right? Exhibit 276.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, would you agree with me, Trooper, that identifications of tire tracks are largely subjective?
No.
Okay. Well, there is no set number of characteristics that you have to identify in order to make such an identification. Is there?
That's correct.
There's no computer or software program or machine that says or tells you that that tire and that photograph came from the same tire, right?
That's correct.
Okay. This is something that you decide based on eyeballing the inked impression and the photograph of the impression from the scene, right?
In the tire.
And the tire, right?
Correct.
Okay. It's you, Trooper Gerard, looking at those things, which results in the opinion that you gave this jury a couple of minutes ago, right?
Not correct, because we have a verification process.
Well, there's nobody here who's testified yet about verification. I'm talking about your opinion, sir. Your opinion is based on your looking at the stuff that you told us about today, right?
That's correct.
Okay, and that's what you're telling us about today, right? You're telling us about your opinion, not anybody else's opinion, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And your opinion, sir, is based on your training and your experience, right?
Correct.
Okay. So let's talk about your training and experience. Now, Trooper, you told us on direct examination yesterday that you had taken 2 week-long classes, right?
Correct.
Okay. Well, in fact, Trooper, one of those 2 classes had nothing at all to do with tires or tire tracks, did it?
I took a tire track class.
That's not what I asked you, sir. You told us yesterday you took 2 week-long classes. Isn't that what you told this jury under oath yesterday, sir?
I don't recall.
Okay. Isn't it true, sir, that one of the 2 classes you told us about yesterday had nothing to do with tires or tire tracks?
That's correct.
So let's talk about the one class that you took on the subject of tires and tire tracks. Okay, Trooper?
Sure.
Okay. And in fact, Trooper, that class, which you took back in 2009, right?
Yes, that's
All right.
correct.
That class was 4.5 days long, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Now, since you've taken that one 4.5-day class on this subject 6 years ago, you told us yesterday that you've examined a grand total of about 15 tires, right?
That's correct.
Not 1,500 tires, right?
Correct.
Not 150 tires, right?
That's correct.
15 tires, 1-5, right?
Correct.
Are you telling us, sir, that taking a single class, 4.5 days long, and examining 15 tires makes you an expert in the field of tire track examination?
That wasn't my entirety of training in impression evidence.
Well, we're not talking about your entirety of impression evidence. Impression evidence includes fingerprints, right?
Friction ridge analysis.
Friction ridge analysis, which are made by fingers, right?
Correct.
Okay. You're not here today talking about fingerprints, right?
That's right.
Okay. We're talking about tire tracks today, right?
Correct.
Okay. And with respect to tire tracks, what you're opining about to the members of this jury today, you took a single 4.5-day class, right?
That's correct.
And you've never even testified in court before about tire tracks, right?
That's correct.
This is your first time, right?
Correct.
In a first-degree murder trial, right?
Correct.
Trooper, what laboratory do you currently work out of?
CSS Worcester Central.
Okay. And before that, where were you?
I was in Sudbury,
And before that, where were you?
Springfield.
Well, weren't you working out of Devon, sir?
I was assigned to Devens, but they shut down that lab and everyone from Devens moved to Sudbury.
Well, let's talk about that. So you were assigned to the State Police sub-lab at Devens, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And is that where you were working?
Not particularly.
You weren't working. You were assigned there, but you weren't working there.
I
Is
was
that your testimony?
Correct. I was assigned there. I was doing some of my work in Springfield.
Okay. But that was the laboratory that you were assigned to, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And that laboratory was closed down in 2013, right? Trooper, show you and mark as Exhibit 277. Do that?
I do.
Okay. And you told us a little while ago that that is the photograph of the impression of tire track impression from the scene that you used to make your identification, to render your opinion in this case, right?
I did.
Okay. And you told us that this impression has 5 ribs, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And fair to say, sir, that there are tens of millions of tires on the roads in the United States of America with 5 ribs?
Yes, that's correct.
Do you have any idea how many other tires of this same size and design, that is, the same size and design of this tire sitting right here, which I think is Exhibit 276, were on the roads in the United States of America in June of 2013?
No, I do not.
Now, you showed us a few minutes ago some rubber molds that you made of the tire, right?
That's correct.
Okay. But there was no plaster cast made of that tire track impression at the scene, was there?
It was not.
Okay, why don't you tell the jury what a plaster cast of a tire track impression is?
Well, we don't use plaster, we use dental stone.
I'm sorry, what do you use?
Dental stone?
Spell that, please.
Dental, as in a dental
Oh,
stone.
dental stone,
Yeah,
okay. All right, tell us what dental stone is, please.
So dental stone comes in a powder. It's mixed with water to the consistency of pancake batter. From there, the dental stone is then poured onto the impression until it dries, and then lifted off the scene.
Okay, so that process is employed to make a cast or something solid that you can look at from an impression that's lying on the ground, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And a dental cast impression has more detail in it than a photograph, doesn't it?
Not necessarily.
Well, why do you make dental cast impressions?
In the event that you have a very deep impression, you may get some deflection, which may expand the impression where the class characteristics won't match, laying a two-dimensional impression over it. So you need to actually take calipers and measure the cast. Or if there's any type of limiting aspects to the photograph, such as, let's say, a photograph is out of focus, or anything that's wrong with the photograph, there wasn't a scale in the photograph where you would be unable to calibrate the image, then a casting would be beneficial.
Well, I'm not sure I follow that. Let me ask another question. In the 4.5-day course you took about tire track impressions, sir, did you learn about dental stone casts?
I did.
Okay. And did you learn in that class, sir, that a dental stone cast contains greater detail than a photograph?
It can.
And in this case, it takes, what, 30 to 60 minutes to make a dental stone impression of a tire track?
Approximately.
That wasn't done in this case, was it?
Not that I know of.
Now, you told us that you went to the garage or the bay at Lakeville to look at the Altima, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And that's where you made these impressions that are in evidence is, one of them is 281, and I'm not sure what the other one is.
That's correct.
Okay. And you did that by literally rolling the car with the tires on it, obviously, so the car could roll over that piece of, over that transparency, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And when you did that, was there anybody inside the car when you did that?
Yes.
Okay. How many people were inside the car?
One.
Okay. And was there anything else inside the car other than that one person?
No.
Okay. Now, did you learn in your 4.5-day class on tire track, sir, that the tire track impression made by a tire, the detail contained in that impression, may vary depending on the weight inside the car at the time the impression is made?
Correct.
Okay. So, for example, if there were hypothetically 4 people inside a car, the impression might look different than if there was one person inside the car, right?
Very minor.
Very minor, is that your
Minor,
testimony?
yes.
It would look different, wouldn't it, sir?
Yes.
And you understood when you did this work, did you not, that the prosecution's theory was that there were 4 people inside that car?
Correct.
But you didn't put 4 people inside the car when you made your transparency, did you, Trooper?
No, I did not.
Now, you told us on direct examination that there were 4, you call them, they're called stone holds that you use in making your identification, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And a stone hold is just another name for like a little pebble or a rock stuck inside a tire tread, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And you told us about 4 of them, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, I don't think the whole jury can see the tire at once, so I'm going to use a photograph. Let me approach the witness first. This is 237B. You recognize that as a photograph of the right rear passenger tire.
I do.
Okay, and let me actually show you another one. Let me show Mr. First. You recognize that photograph as another photograph of the right rear tire, right rear tire of the Altima.
I do.
Okay, I offer this as an exhibit.
No objections, Your Honor.
Mark's next exhibit.
So I'm showing you now, been marked as exhibit 286. This is that same tire, right? That we're talking about today.
Correct.
Okay. Now, would you agree with me, sir? And this just shows one part of that tire, right?
Correct.
Okay. Would you agree? But you've examined the whole tire, right?
I did.
Okay. Would you agree with me, sir, that there are hundreds of stone holes in this tire?
I would.
And you focus on 4 of them, right?
That's correct.
Trooper, you have no idea how many other tires on the road in June of 2013 had little rocks or pebbles in those same 4 spots, do you?
I don't.
I have no further questions.
The particular question impression, the tread tire marks that you were looking at, was that a deep impression?
No, shallow.
Would a dental stone impression have aided you in any way with regards to this particular analysis?
Not in my opinion.
Counsel asked you whether or not the number of people in the vehicle would in any way change your opinion or change the ability to analyze this particular situation. Can you explain further why it would or why it would not?
There may be a minor change in the tire, but those tires are rated for a specific weight rating.
And do you know, sir, whether or not at the time that particular impression, Mr. Lloyd's body was already on the ground?
I don't.
Does the difference between 3 people in the vehicle and 4 people in the vehicle change your opinion in any way?
It does not.
No further questions.
There was 1 person in the vehicle when you made that impression, right?
That's correct.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Please face the front and raise your right hand.
You solemnly swear your testimony will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
There you are. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Would you state your full name, please?
Barbara Scardino,
And could you spell your last name, please?
Scardino.
Okay. And ma'am, where do you live?
I live in Franklin, Massachusetts.
And do you work?
Yes, I do.
And what type of work do you do?
I'm a realtor for Real Living Realty Group
Okay. And how long have you worked for Real Living Realty Group?
since October of 2012.
Okay. What type of work do you do for Real Living?
I help people buy, sell, and rent properties.
Now, I'd like to direct your attention back to April, sometime in April of 2013. Did you know an individual by the name of Kevin Anderson?
Yes.
And sometime in April, well, first of all, how did you know Kevin Anderson?
He works for the New England Patriots, and he helps players with any type of relocation and any type of anything that they need to make themselves comfortable. So he contacted me. He contacts me if he has players that need properties.
Okay. Now, at some time in April 2013, did he contact you about such a need?
Yes.
And did, in the course of your conversation, did he give you some parameters of a particular type of property that he wanted you to set up appointments for?
Yes, he said, yes.
Okay. And just what type, as a result of that conversation, what types of property were you looking for?
Rental properties within 15 or 20 minutes of the stadium.
Okay, and when you say 15 or 20 minutes of the stadium, what stadium is that?
Gillette Stadium in Foxborough.
Now, as a result of that conversation, did you set up or make appointments to view certain rental properties within those parameters?
Yes.
And specifically, what type of, were there a number of bedrooms or anything, the style of apartment that you were looking for?
I think it was just 2 bedrooms, 1 bath.
Okay. And within the 15 to 20 minutes of Gillette?
Correct.
Okay. So as a result of understanding that information, how many properties fitting that were you able to make appointments for?
4 properties.
And on a particular day in April, did you ultimately meet with Kevin Anderson?
I think it was actually in May.
Okay. And in May, at some point, did you have a meeting with Kevin Anderson?
Yes.
And when you met with him, do you recall, first of all, where you met him?
He came to my office, met me in the parking lot, and followed me to the properties.
Okay. And when he met you at your office, did you then travel in your car, your own car, or in his car?
I was in my own car.
And when you went to the first property, do you remember where that was, just in terms of town or location?
I do not. I don't remember the order of the properties.
Okay. Do you remember, out of the 4 that you made appointments for, what towns those 4 were in?
Bellingham, Franklin, and Rentham, to the best of my recollection.
Okay. Now, after meeting Mr. Anderson at your office and then traveling to the first location, wherever that location was, when you arrived there, did you get out of your car?
Yes.
And did he get out of his car?
Yes.
And when he got out of his car, did you see anyone else get out of the car?
Yes.
And who was that?
Aaron Hernandez.
Okay. Now, had you met Aaron Hernandez prior to that date?
No.
And as a result of Kevin Anderson and Aaron Hernandez getting out of the car, were you introduced at that time?
Yes.
Okay. And Aaron Hernandez that you met on that day, do you see him in the courtroom?
Yes.
Could you just point him out and describe what he's wearing, please?
Suit, blue shirt, blue tie, stripe, blue striped tie.
Thank you, Your Honor. If the record could reflect the witness identifying the defendant.
It may.
And at that time, did you ultimately go and look at an apartment?
Yes.
Okay. And after looking at that apartment, did you go to another apartment?
Yes.
And do you recall where the second apartment was located?
They were all in Rentham, Franklin, and Bellingham.
Okay. And so did you, during the course of now, well, let me ask you this. So after going to the first, at some point, did you return to your car and then the same thing, Mr. Anderson and the defendant followed you again?
Yes.
And then did you show the second apartment?
Yes.
And then after doing that, did you go to a third apartment?
Yes.
And then lastly, did you end it by going to a fourth apartment?
Yes.
Now, during the course of those appointments that you were with the defendant, Mr. Anderson, did you have much conversation with the defendant himself?
No, I didn't.
Okay. And at the last occasion, do you recall where you had gone for your fourth appointment of the day?
Yes, I do.
And where was that?
599 Old West Central Street in Franklin.
And just describe that property, if you would.
It's a condominium complex with I'm not sure how many buildings, and there are some, most are owner-occupied and some are rentals, and they're garden-style apartments.
Okay. And when you say garden style, just what do you mean by that?
Single level, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath. You walk into a building, and then there's 3 floors. You go to the individual apartments on the floor.
Okay, and at this location, do you recall the apartment that you went to, what floor was that on?
I think it was the 2nd floor. I don't remember.
Okay. Do you recall it not being the ground floor?
No, I don't think it was the ground floor.
Okay. Ma'am, I'm just going to show you these 2 photographs, ask you if you recognize what's depicted in these.
Yeah.
Okay, and what do you recognize these photos to be?
Ledgewood Condominiums, 599 Old West Central Street.
Okay. And what about this one? Does that portray a particular building?
That's the building that the apartment was in.
Okay, and which, was it designated by a letter?
A.
Your Honor, if I could have this one, please.
No objection.
And we mark as the next exhibit.
I'm just placing 287A on the overhead. Is that the photograph I just showed you? I'm sorry, ma'am, it's right to your left there.
Oh, I could see it over there.
Can you see that all right?
Yeah.
Is that the photograph that you recognize as 599 Old West Central Street?
Yes.
And what town is this in, ma'am?
Franklin, Massachusetts.
And as you described, this garden-style apartment complex, I think you indicated one floor living, which means each apartment, you don't have to go up any stairs within the apartment.
Within the apartment, correct.
And do you recall now how many floors there were in each building?
3 floors.
I'm just going to show you now 287B. You recognize this photo as one of the ones I just showed you.
Yes.
And what does that show?
The entrance to the building.
And this building here was designated as what?
Building A.
Now, the apartment that you showed the defendant back in the spring of 2013, was that in building?
Excuse me?
Was the apartment that you showed the defendant, was that in building A?
Yes.
Now, after, do you recall how long you were at this last apartment?
I probably 15 minutes.
And as a result of your showing this apartment to the defendant, did something happen after that?
Yes.
And what was that?
He decided that he wanted to take that apartment and submit a rental application.
Okay. And was that done, did you then, was an application prepared and then submitted to the owner of that apartment for potential rental?
Yes.
And ultimately, what happened? Was the apartment rented or not?
The apartment was rented
Okay. And do you recall when that rental started?
sometime during the month of May.
And I'm just going to show you this document and ask you if you recognize it.
Yes,
And what do you recognize this to be?
a standard form apartment lease.
Okay. And did this pertain to a particular apartment?
Yes,
And what apartment was that?
299 Old West Central Street in Franklin.
Okay.
This apartment.
And the renter of this apartment was?
Aaron Hernandez.
Your Honor, I would offer this as the next exhibit.
No objection, Your Honor.
Have you marked this the next exhibit?
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, I'm placing 288 on the overhead. Do you agree with me that there's a number of pages contained in this exhibit?
Yes.
And I'm showing you the first page.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And just directing your attention to information in terms of, is there information on the lease as to when the tenancy would begin, the rental would begin?
Yes, May 1st.
Okay. And terminating,
April 30th, 2014.
now with the lease beginning on May 1, 2013, does that, I think earlier you indicated you thought you looked at the apartment sometime in May. Do you believe that was sometime before that you actually booked at the apartment with the defendant?
I think we actually looked at it right at the beginning of May.
I see.
I think it was actually May 3rd.
May 3rd, okay.
And they postdated the lease to start on May 1st.
I see, okay. If I could have just one moment now, please. Now, after that occasion of showing the apartment, did you have another occasion to go back to the apartment sometime within the next week or so?
Yes.
And did you, and the purpose of the second occasion was what?
I met with Kevin Anderson to give him the keys to the apartment and so that he could meet somebody to deliver furniture.
Okay. And at that time, was the defendant present?
No, he wasn't.
Did you have any further contact with the defendant after that?
No, I didn't.
Nothing further, thank you.
Good morning, Ms. Cardino.
Good morning.
Ms. Gardino, you're a professional real estate agent, correct?
Yes.
And you described generally the types of services you provide to clients needing real estate assistance. Or on direct examination, you described those.
Yes.
And one of the services you've provided is you have assisted players from the New England Patriots with their real estate needs.
Yes.
And in June 2013, you'd been doing that for a little over a year.
About a year and a half, yes.
And those real estate needs of the players, those include purchasing real estate?
Yes.
Did they also include renting houses or renting apartments?
Yes.
They included temporary housing that bridge housing players may need?
Yes.
So it was really kind of the whole gamut of real estate services that you provided to players from the New England Patriots.
Yes.
And Kevin Anderson, that's a person who works for the New England Patriots, is that right?
Correct. Yes.
And would it be fair to describe him as sort of your contact at the New England Patriots?
Yes.
So leads or requests for assistance for Patriots players in the past have come to you through Mr. Anderson.
Correct.
And this particular request for Aaron came to you through Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Now, you mentioned the search on direct examination that you conducted, and you worked within certain parameters that you understood was the client's request. Is that correct?
Correct.
And one of those parameters was within 15 to 20 minutes of Gillette Stadium in Foxborough.
Correct.
And as far as the size of the apartment, you were looking for something in the 1 to 2 bedroom range. Is that correct?
2 bedrooms.
2 bedrooms. When you conducted this search, you confined your search to that area, didn't you? The 15 to 20 minute range to Gillette Stadium.
Yes.
Now, in this process, Ms. Gardino, you knew that Mr. Hernandez had a home in North Attleboro, didn't you?
Yes.
And you showed 4 properties to Mr. Anderson and Aaron, and I believe you said they were in Rentham, Bellingham, and Franklin?
Yes.
And as a result of the showing of the apartment that was depicted in Exhibit 288, a decision was made to lease that apartment, correct?
Correct.
And that unit was leased by Aaron Hernandez.
Correct.
Now, in Exhibit 288, the lease shows the name of the tenant, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
And the name of the tenant on the lease is Aaron Hernandez.
Yes.
And indeed, additional documents that were filled out in connection with the leasing, mold certifications, renter's application, these types of things, they all were in the name of Aaron Hernandez.
Yes.
Now, you're in the real estate business, Ms. Gardino. Are you familiar with a term called a straw man transaction?
No.
Well, have you ever heard of people leasing or purchasing real estate through another party?
Yes.
And sometimes people do that because they want to conceal their identity, don't they?
I guess so.
But that didn't happen in this case, did it?
No.
Now, when the lease application was submitted, to whom was that submitted, Ms. Gardino?
To the property management division of my company.
And are there particular individuals to whom that was submitted?
Matthew Kelly and Michael Colombo.
Did the paperwork that was submitted to Matthew Kelly and Michael Colombo indicate that Mr. Hernandez was the prospective tenant of that property?
Yes.
And your company approved that tenancy, correct?
Yes.
And that triggered the preparation of a lease for the premises.
Yes.
And that's the lease we just saw, Exhibit 288.
Yes.
So when the lease was executed, you knew Mr. Hernandez was renting this apartment, correct?
Yes,
Mr. Anderson from the Patriots knew that Mr. Hernandez was renting this apartment, correct?
correct.
Sounds like Mr. Colombo and Mr. Kelly knew that Mr. Hernandez was renting the apartment.
Correct.
Now, in the course of your services that you've provided, Ms. Scardino, you've helped Patriot players find rental properties close to the stadium in the past, haven't you?
I have.
And
Yes.
you've done that for players, even when those players had homes elsewhere, haven't you?
Yes,
And in this transaction, the property ended up fitting precisely the parameters that you were given for this transaction.
yes.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Ma'am, you said you're from Franklin?
I am.
And the distance, the travel distance from this apartment to Gillette Stadium is how far?
About 15 minutes.
And you're familiar with North Attleboro, is that right?
Yes.
And would you agree that's about the same distance as Gillette Stadium?
Objection, leading.
Objection sustained to the following question. It's a question, so it's stricken.
How far? How far is it from North Attleboro to Gillette?
About 15 minutes.
And with regard to who you understood was going to be the tenant, who was that?
Aaron Hernandez.
Okay. Did you ever meet an individual by the name of Ernest Wallace?
Objection, beyond the scope.
Sustained.
Okay. Well, when Mr. Fee asked you about who you understood was going to be the tenant, and who Mr. Colombo understood was going to be the tenant, who Mr. Kelly understood was going to be the tenant, who was that?
Aaron Hernandez.
Did you know of any other tenant who was going to be living there?
No.
Did you ever meet an individual by the name of George Wallace, also known as
Objection.
Ernest Wallace?
Objection, beyond the scope.
No.
Was there any discussion that somebody else was going to be living there other than the defendant?
No.
Thank you. I have nothing else.
Nothing, thank you.
Yes, again. Morning recess at this time. Suspended, please don't discuss the case by themselves.
Could all rise for the jury, please?